The handheld market has exploded in the last 5 years, and if you're looking for an emulator in the Game Boy style that is a very tall handheld, or a very small handheld, or even a very wide handheld, this review's got you covered in head-to-toe pixely goodness. And in this video, we're going to be giving away the Big Chungus SJ Game handheld that you see. If you'd like to be considered to win, be a subscriber, and also leave a comment on this video. I'll be picking one of them and pinning it later. So as we enter the final quarter of 2024, I can confidently say that these are going to be all the options from Amberik, Pow Kitty, and Miu that we're going to be looking for in this year's roundup. So let's boogie down this list and see what I recommend for my top 5 vertical handhelds. And first up is the Amberik RG35XX Plus, and this is a pretty cool little handheld. The price comes in between $50 and $75, including shipping, and is available pretty much everywhere. The power level of this device lets it play all the way up to the PlayStation Portable, with some caveats. The Nintendo DS being able to speed it up a little bit, and N64, with also some caveats. Everything below plays perfectly fine. It's running on a Linux-based operating system, and Amberik's front end that I think is pretty good, and also has options for other front ends available on the market from third parties. For me, this device doesn't have that many quirks or flaws. I did notice the sleep function with the stock software wasn't that great when it launched, but now with all the updates, I think the sleep function works pretty well. The feel of this device is plasticky, like a Game Boy, in addition to not being too big, coming right in the center size-wise between all the other devices we have on this list. My overall thoughts for this device is this is a fantastic benchmark device, which if you can get it cheaper than the $50 mark, I think is an absolute steal. This gets a lot of gaming done and does it on the cheap. And next up is the odd shape and odd color pick of this list, which is the Pow Kitty RGB20XX. Now this device is very tall. If you're looking for an emulator that plays Game Boy Color games at the biggest resolution I've seen on a handheld, this is pretty much it. It's got a 4-inch 720 by 720 screen and comes in at around $90 and is available from their website and pretty much everywhere else. Links down below. And I think this console plays everything up to the Nintendo DS pretty well. Meaning all of your Game Boy Advance games, all of your pocket consoles, and your 8 and 16-bit devices will play very well. This is also a Linux-based operating system, and their front end does very well with what it does. It's simple, has everything lined up, and just gets the job done. This thing's quirks and flaws are that it is a large device. It's got the same power level as a lot of the other emulators on this list, but the cool thing here is that screen. So if you have bigger hands or want something to just keep at your house to play Game Boy games in the highest fidelity I've seen on a handheld, I think this does a great job. My overall thoughts for this device is get it to play 1:1 aspect ratio games, like the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. They look really cool. And next up, we have the Miu Mini Plus, and this is one I consider a benchmark device. This plays pretty much every game you want to play handheld in this form factor, all the way up to the Nintendo DS. It's running a Linux-based operating system and can also run some third-party operating systems depending on your preference and what you want to put on it. The quirks and flaws about this device, which comes in at around $50, is that there's no front-facing store that you can purchase this from, which is why the link in the description does a little bit of an upcharge, but you get free shipping on it. So that's one of the issues with this device and why it's not nearly as pickable as I would say the Amberiks are, because this is only through a seller from China where it doesn't have an actual storefront like Amberik does. The feel of this device is great. They even have custom buttons for them, and it slides right into your pocket, being one of those middle sizes, just a hair smaller than the Amberik. If you're looking for a portable baseline solution, this will get a ton of gaming done. Next up is relatively new, and I actually really like what they've done with ArcOS. This is the Pow Kitty V10. Now this is a newer console that's come out this year, towards the middle of 2024, and right now you can get this device for around $40 or $50. Comes in a bunch of different colors, and has a pretty good power range. This thing can play all the way up to the PSP with some caveats of not playing all the PSP games, Nintendo DS games very well, in addition to playing some N64 but not all of them. Everything below those systems plays very well. This is also running Linux-based operating system called ArcOS, and I think it does a great job of being fast with an easy boot and restart function, in addition to being very easy to sort through and use for the first time. I feel like this device's shtick is that it's very good at Game Boy Advance games. games. It scales very well to this screen size, which is a 3.5-inch 480 by 320 screen that does really well with those Game Boy Advance games. My overall thought for this one is if you're looking for something that you're going to be playing Game Boy Advance games on mostly and don't want it to be stretched in a weird angle, I think this is a great pickup, and plays all the other games the other consoles can do as well. And last but not least, but comes in at the least, is the GKD Pixel. And the GKD Pixel is the smallest device on our list here. Compared to some of the other options, it is absolutely tiny. It is a 2.4-inch IPS screen with some amount of pixels on there. It's very tiny, but looks very crisp when you throw some games on there. This is what I'd put in the category of a keychain device, and not really a device you're going to sit down and put hours and hours on. Something more like you throw in your pocket and forget it's there until you're bored on the train or something. The price of this device comes in at around 80 bucks, but is getting kind of weird because it's not really available everywhere now. I'm not sure if the company has stopped making this device, but you can still find it on AliExpress, the link down in the description, which is litnxt.com, and a few other places. It is a full aluminum construction, and the buttons feel great. I wish they didn't have the logo right on the front of the screen, but this does get a lot of gaming done on the go in a very, very tiny package. The most you want to play power-wise for this device is pretty much up to the Game Boy Advance and very simple games from the 8 and 16-bit eras. It only having face buttons and a D-pad means 3D and joystick games are pretty much out. I like this one as a novelty or the smallest option of this list. Now this is my list of devices that I think are worth the money and the form factor, but there are others. Like all of the other Amberik variants that have come from the Amberik RG35XX. The Plus spelled out, the non-Plus version, the updated 2020 whatever version XX. Whichever version of these you end up with, I think it'll be totally fine. Each one of these devices are good on their own, so just, pick the one that has the replaceable battery. It'll probably last the longest. In addition to the RG40XXV, this is a new one from Amberik, which is a little bit larger, has a 4-inch 640 by 480 resolution, and looks around the size and shape of like the analog pocket. What they did differently here is they added a joystick at the very bottom and added a little bit more battery and tapered the back a little bit. This one power-wise will play all the way up to the Nintendo DS with the same ideas as the other ones. So having the joystick is nice, but totally up to you if it's worth it for this form factor, or if you want a slightly larger screen. Once I get my hands on it, there will be a full review down in the description. Another cool one that doesn't really fit into the handheld emulator category of this list, but is a handheld emulator, is the Funny Playing FPGA Game Boy. The kit that they released for this is USB-C charging, looks exactly like a Game Boy, uses the Game Boy shell and buttons and all that stuff, and it's actually awesome. The idea here is this is a kit that you put together that basically replicates a Game Boy Color. So if you're into doing little projects with technology in mind, I think this is a cool one because it gives you a USB-C, a whole working Game Boy Color, and the new screen looks fantastic. I recommend this option if you're looking for a cartridge-based solution and more of that retro feel, and only if you're looking for a Game Boy Color and Game Boy game emulation. Now there are tons of different emulators on this list, and these will widely vary in prices. If you'd be interested in picking any of these up, litnxt.com has sent these over to me for review, and I've done individual in-depth reviews of all of these devices, so if you'd like to see those, check them out here. And if you'd like to pick up the handhelds, links are in the description. They are affiliate links. They do help me out do this more often for a little bit more money than nothing, because YouTube doesn't really help us out very much with the cash. So that's all I have for today. Hope you enjoyed this list. We'll be around here for some more next year. Davey out.